as I sit here and do about 12 takes for the intro of the past episode 148. Hopefully, we got it right this time. It was good job. I'm your host BT back with another episode. It's been a very heavy week of sports this past week, so we're not gonna really waste any time in giving y'all the early random credentials. We're just gonna jump into the show. Of course, before we do that, I always like to give a little bit of a sponsor and discussion shout out. As always, episodes are uploaded using the website Spreaker.com. If y'all looking to start off with podcasting, like I tell everyone each week, um, you have Libsyn, you have Blueberry, you have other options for podcasting. I found Spreaker to be a better home for me. It's pretty convenient. Prices aren't too bad. You can always find promotional deals as well. And of course, the microphone that's being used is the Blue Yeti microphone. Um, I've I did have the Samson Meteor before, and it was a pretty good mic. I'm not going to lie, fool myself into thinking otherwise, but I've had this mic now for a solid year, and I wouldn't look back on looking at any other type of equipment for starting out with podcasting. Now, one thing I want to say, and I know I'm probably going to go off topic starting off with this, but I'm going to go ahead and address it anyway because it's just me being me, and that is if you are looking to do podcasting, because I've had a lot of people who I know personally who said, hey, I want to do podcasts and I'm interested in podcasts and I want to know how to get started. I'm going to give you a very honest opinion about that. And I know this could be a separate show and it probably will be. And I'm going to address this more than likely in April, which I'll get to that soon as we get close to that point. But if you're looking to do podcasting or you have an interest or passion for podcasting, two of my biggest things I would recommend is knowing that you're going to have to invest. And invest is not just financially, but time. A lot of time goes into shows, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people won't see that when it comes to the end result because you just look at, oh, so and so did a recording, but there's not really research or any discussion during that time period. Some podcasts is a little different, but to each his own. But time and money will likely be invested in your shows. And second, all, and most importantly, do research as far as like listening to other podcasters or more so know what you're jumping into and don't just jump into it and say, hey, I think it would be a good idea to do because X, Y, and Z. Um, I'm giving a personal story and then I'll go into the stories and the topics as always. But for me personally, I know I gained my knack of podcasting strictly through listening, kind of seeing that it was something that I wanted to do. I tried it and dabbled with it a little bit, but then I also realized I needed to listen to other folks who were doing podcasts and see what they were doing that worked for their show, but also come up with my own way of standing out. So that's something I would definitely give as a strong piece of advice or definite recommendation if you're really devoted and dedicated to doing podcasting. So I wanted to give that. I know that's like 3 minutes of minutia, but I wanted to at least make sure I didn't skip or overlap that discussion before going any further. So with that being said, as always, each week, excuse me, sorry, getting myself together. But before I continue, if I sound a little different, a little odd, I have been kind of fighting and recovering with a cold, so it's gotten a lot better. But there were a couple of days where I was just not 100%, so it worked out better in the long haul. But nonetheless, we're here, so we're gonna just go ahead and chop right into it. This week, as you know, I do each week. I do always give you the website for the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And anyone, if you are in crisis, I always share this page. If you are going to the website or you're looking at the website as a useful source, at the bottom of the page is where I get this information. It states if you are in crisis, contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1 800 799 SAFE or 1 800 799 7233, or you can go to www.thehotline.org. And also, if you go back to episode 146, that's where I store the information regarding if you wanted to do any of the emergency SOS for your iPhone or your Android devices. So definitely don't forget those options. They are available. I promised her I would share and promote each week. One of my friends, Renetta, she is in her business doing a Taste of Heaven RVA. And like I said, if you are looking for it, be sure to put a Taste of Heaven RVA to distinguish the specifics of her business. They do serve soul food, pretty good food. You definitely won't be displeased with what you get there. She is at for if you're in the Richmond area, she is at Virginia Center Commons, that most people know it as. The address is 10101 Brook Road. That's Glen Allen, Virginia 23059. If you go on my Instagram page under past podcasts, you'll see the business card, and it has all the information as far as contact and things of that sort. But I'll go ahead and provide it here as well. 804, if you want to contact her at the store, it's 804 266 2509. Mobile 804-433-9954. And if you're looking to send an email regarding any information such as the menu, a taste of heaven RVA at gmail.com is the best point of contact. And this is with Vernetta, her husband Jarvis, and Miss Saunders, who does a lot of Caribbean based cooking there. So if you're looking to get some Caribbean options, you have those there as well. Those links are also in the show notes. So we know if you were under a rock, and it just kind of worked out to be a very coincidental week of sports, that everything kind of went the way it did, that our big story that must be talked about and has to be addressed is the infamous Super Bowl Sunday that occurred on this Sunday on the 4th. A lot of things to say, a lot of topics to get into. So what I'm going to do is, well, like I've done now with the new format and going over the stories. There was, with broadcasting, there was a lot that was addressed could be pointed out related to things that were pointed out and addressed correctly, and things that were missed during the broadcast of the Super Bowl. And then I'm going to talk about the game as condensed as I can. I know that's going to be a tall order, but I'm going to do my best in making sure that you all know what went on. But breaking down the hits and misses of the NBC's broadcast of Super Bowl 52. Number one, fans. Sometimes social media can make sports fans smarter viewers. In the first quarter, game analyst Chris Collinsworth repeatedly described a play as a RPO, or run pass option, on Philadelphia's opening drive, but the production did not tell the audience, made up of many casual sports fans, what RPO was. According to Chiefs All-Pro offensive lineman Mitchell Schwartz and former NFL wide receiver Bucky Brooks, Collinsworth also incorrectly ID'd a play as an RPO twice. Helpfully, Schwartz explained what it was in a series of tweets. Those tweets are listed to kind of give anyone who watches or doesn't watch football a bit of an advantage. So if any of you who are my non-sports folks who are listening, this will kind of give you a better understanding if you did watch the Super Bowl. A run pass option, or RPO, is a called run play with a pass option. It can be a defensive end, a linebacker, or just a specific alignment the quarterback is looking for. The offensive line blocks for the run the entire way, and the quarterback makes a decision pre or post snap depending on which variation is called, to run or throw. Collinsworth kind of went into that discussion. They addressed it and kind of made that known to the man of what was going on and things of that sort. Number two, which we all, when my friends who I looked at the game with on Sunday, we all were confused when this happened. There was a point of the game where there was a 45-second blackout with 7 minutes and 24 seconds left in the second quarter, where they went to break and it was just a black screen. I still believe, and I'm not going to lie, their term is saying it as, we had a brief equipment failure that we quickly resolved. No game, action, or commercial time was missed. I feel like, personally, whoever bought that ad space didn't have an ad or something. I don't know. But it was just weird when it happened. But things go the way they do, and it is what it is regarding that play. So number three, Collinsworth and Michaels did not have a good night on predicting the official decision on pass completion plays. Example, I think they have to overturn it, Collinsworth said on Eagles tight end Zach Ertz game-winning touchdown catch. After Eagles running back Corey Clement third quarter touchdown catch was ruled complete, Collinsworth said with exasperation, I give up. If that ball is not loose in his arms when that last foot came down, I give up. I don't know the rule. Um, Gaudelli suggested that his broadcasters were consistent with how catches have been called all year. If you think about how the game was, if you think about the game has been called this year, Clement's catch and Ertz's catch, I would say a little surprising that both of them stood up. At the end of the day, I think people would love to see that it's called. Number four was pointed out. Michaels immediately called that the Ertz touchdown was going to be questionable. He referenced Steelers tight end Jesse James, who had a go-ahead touchdown overturned in Week 15 against the Patriots. That was good. Gaudelli showed 10 replays of Ertz's scoring for viewers during the replay, as well as a tri-split screen of the coaches and referee and players on the field. Viewers were not happy on social media that the broadcasters were wrong on their prediction, but the production decision making here was impressive. Um, Number five, I thought one of Gaudelli's best decisions of the night was to let Collinsworth and Michaels and viewers rewatch the Clement touchdown catch after a commercial break. After looking at the play one last time, here's what they said. Collinsworth stated, I would have called that incomplete. Michaels then follows, we have seen that called incomplete, I would say majority of the time. Um, Number six, and let me make sure because I'm saying his name, but I don't want to overpass it. Um, so the game producer, his name is Fred Gaudelli. He's kind of that's the individual they refer to. I didn't mention this part, so I'll go back and read this from number one. We did talk about how we were going to handle RPO because we knew that the non-regular NFL fan would be somewhat of a foreign term, said game producer Fred Gaudelli in an interview with SI.com after the game. It happened pretty quickly. I think Al did say the word run pass option, so at least we established the term. I always planned to do that graphic early in the game once the situation presented itself to me, but I didn't want to limit Chris at the beginning if he saw it. I didn't want to do that big graphic at the beginning of the game. I wanted the game to settle in. For the people who did not know what it was, they would get caught up. Toughest part with that, so reading that now, looking at it and assessing it in hindsight, it's a challenge because when you're watching the game is going at full speed. Unless you have someone there who does not watch or does not understand football, that time has to be invested in explaining why that play was done right or why that play was done wrong, things of that sort. Um, Godelli assessed his personal handling of the production. That was addressed in number six. Not really going to go into that in full. Number seven stated the pace of the game did not allow his group to do everything they wanted to do. Now, there were points of the game where it seemed slow, but it seemed like it was its normal movement, if that makes sense. I will, admit with watching games and watching football, there are going to be times and there are going to be moments where the game kind of, I don't want to say runs itself, but it becomes pretty self sufficient in a sense. Um, he stated that the pace of the game did not allow his group to do everything he wanted to do. Trade off makes it, but said the trade off is that it makes for exciting television. We may not be able to do every story we want to do or every element that we want to do, but America does not care. They are watching a really well played football game. Godelli said the pace has effect. It was much easier with the Eagles because they were huddling and running the play clock down, but it was not a surprise. We prepared for that. Number eight, it took NBC until midway in the first quarter to give us info about the previous game saver and New England cornerback Malcolm Butler that he was starting for the Patriots. As for the reason why, viewers did not get an update until 11 minutes and 53 remaining in the second quarter. When Michaels said Butler had not played a defensive snap due to a coach's decision. They're trying, so it was mainly just trying to catch things that went on during the game. Number nine, great work by Collinsworth on the first replay of LeGarrette Blount's 21-yard touchdown. He was immediately on the two blocks from center Jason Kelsey that freed Blount to score. Number 10, I asked Godelli if he would consider adding a rules analyst in the booth for NBA Sunday Night Football heading forward. We had a former referee and a league officiating supervisor in our booth tonight. He said, I can tell you what he was saying, but I think it was so close that the ultimate arbiter was going to make his decision. I think Mike Pereira or Dean Blandino could have added their opinion, and Chris was doing that as well. But if you take the way the catches were called during the regular season, those Eagle catches were outside the parameters of what Chris had seen all year. And he goes into more detail regarding that. Um, Number 11, and we were talking about this during the game, and it's very interesting. Michaels turns 74 on November 12th, but he does have a significant incentive if he wants to call one more Super Bowl. In calling Super Bowl 52 last night, his 10th as the play-by-play voice, Michaels is only behind former CBS and Fox announcer Pat Summerall for the most Super Bowl play-by-play assignments of all time. He could tie the mark at Super Bowl 55 on February 7th, 2021 at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay, the next Super Bowl broadcast for NBC. Al Michaels did a pretty good job. The challenge would be if he does that game, you'd be looking at 76, 77 of him doing that match. They debuted a new score bug and a graphics package. It's going to be used next year for Sunday Night Football. We just want graphics that you are not going to see that at 1 or 4. We want them to be eye grabbing, yet they have to be readable. I thought it had a lot of style to do it, and pretty easily readable. And it was a bit of a different font than what they're normally using. But the advantage to doing that is it's the new year. So it's 2018, and it's an opportunity for you to kind of test things out, see what may work, see what may or may not, might not work for next year. And there were a couple of other things. Um, it's I don't want to sit and go A to Z on all of these topics because there's so many. But like I said, this was all from the broadcast perspective. So now I'm going to talk about the game as a whole. The game as a whole, you could tell, and this is going to be from both sides as fans. Anyone who is a New England fan was very pleased of how play calls were made based on penalties and things of that sort. Um, I personally feel as though I'm not going to say it was called as a perfect game, but I also won't say that there were times that they missed marks because I mean no game is never going to be done perfectly. That's a given. That being said, you could tell that the refs made sure anything that was questioned or anything that was challenged was going to get its proper challenging on the field. And in that regard, I'm okay with it. Uh, there were a series of events that the NFL that players would look to make sure, or that I'm sorry, not players, that fans were certain of if they saw a call being made that it wasn't that it was a reason why this call was made, such as a holding, things of that nature. Looking at the full breakdown, because I wanted to make sure that I found this stat because this is always where it gets fun. The Eagles had 6 penalties called on them for 35 yards. The Patriots only had 1 penalty for 5 yards. One of the majority of the penalties were legit calls. Um, I will say, and I will come clean in looking at it as the one, like it was one call, and I always remember it because it was funny. There were 12 men on the field for the Eagles. The NFL made sure, and NBC made sure to not say that no one was cheating, where they literally showed a pointer on all 12 players, so no one could say no. It's y'all just said it was 12 players, but it's not. But it was really 12 players. Something else that I'm gonna go into is, and this is my personal take on the game, and that would be the infamous catch rule, as far as what's considered a catch, what's not considered a catch. The NFL plays very the NFL plays very unfair with this rule, and I'm going to explain why. The rule is looked at or should be broken down as 2 feet possession of the ball. the analytics and the breakdown that most games have put towards that dynamic, it's so broad and it's so complex that it becomes challenging as a referee and as a fan to know literally what's considered as a catch and what's not considered as a catch. Do I feel as though the catches were questionable? Slightly, but not enough to where they didn't understand or don't realize football. Here's why I say that. There are plays, and there have been players in the NFL who have gone into the end zone, their body's going out of bounds, but the ball has crossed the pylon. And they're reaching with their left hand, like coming if you're running on the right side of the field, they're reaching with their left hand across the pylon. The ball is in, you got the ball over the line, it's a touchdown. Bottom line. And with football, where a lot of people don't think about it is if the nose of the ball has crossed a portion of that white line, it's a touchdown. It doesn't make a difference. And I'm probably being real detailed with looking at it like this. That line is the touchdown line. Not the end zone where they spray paint and they have all of the designs and the logos. No. That line is touchdown. So if you've gotten the ball past that line, if other things happen once it crosses the line, all of that is irrelevant. So that's why when the call was questioned as far as um, their tight end making that catch, there wasn't really much to question or say regarding that catch itself. It was a legitimate catch, no matter how you put it. And I know I'm probably, being the reach or the strong push of saying it or looking at it that way, but it was a catch. The other play, one of the wideouts for Philly was going for a pass. Foles threw it, guy caught it, 2 feet in. They wanted to question which 2 feet were the feet that landed when he had possession of the ball. He had possession. He's going into the end zone. 2 feet were in. It's not that complicated. Another play that happened, and I'm glad they didn't do what I was expecting them to do, is Tom Brady was trying to go for a pass. Arm went forward, ball was already gone. I was waiting for them to see if they were going to do the tuck rule again. Because the tuck rule is where his career really, the tuck rule is where the NFL really was questioned about their loyalty to New England and winning. Talking about those things, uh, they made a real huge mockery, and this may not have been talked about in that article, but Nick Foles was able to get his catch. Tom Brady couldn't catch. Not surprising. I mean, Tom Brady's athletic, but Tom Brady didn't make the play properly, and I feel like if from what I'm looking at, he was real concerned about if he caught the ball if he was gonna get hit. That's just my personal opinion. But that play is neither here nor there. Gronk had a pretty solid performance. Questions about Gronk and whether he's going to retire is interesting. It's an ironic scenario because the Patriots have not won Super Bowls that he's played in, but they have won Super Bowls that he didn't play in, even with him being on the team. Just something to think about. Um, and I'm trying to think of anything else. And this is a very interesting stat too that I'm gonna bring up, and I don't want to forget this either. Um, he's Nick Foles is only the second quarterback to win a Super Bowl since, wait for it, Tom Brady. Because as we all know, this was Carson Wentz's team. Wentz was carrying them. He got him got him to the 15, 16 games in. He gets hurt. Foles comes in. We don't know which Foles we get. We get Foles who actually plays. Their production showed in the Minnesota game. It showed even more in the. It showed even more in the Super Bowl, and here we are. Because I said this before the Super Bowl game started. He had to play a 100% game in order for there to be the slightest bit of a chance for them to win. So props to Foles, props to New England, to Philadelphia. Even with things going the way it did, I definitely give New England their credit. It was a close game. It was called fairly, so I can't you can't be mad about that. It was one of the first or few games that there was only one punt during the game, so that tells you a lot as well. Um, but it went the way it did, and we moved forward. Uh, so now we're going to get into the um, trade of the week, a big trade that happened. No one really saw this coming. This actually happened right uh, the before the Super Bowl started, and that was Alex Smith has been traded to the Washington Redskins. First question is across everyone's mind, and the first concern that everyone is thinking of, which I wouldn't blame anyone, is where does this put um, where does this put Kirk Cousins? And you would think that that's an important part of this equation, but it's not really being looked at yet because there's a possibility they may keep both quarterbacks. What makes it an even more interesting scenario is Alex Smith is older, and there was a concern last year already with Cousins when he had a franchise tag on him and whether they were going to pay him or not. So if anyone has or has not been keeping up or may or may not be aware, Alex Smith was traded to the Redskins for a third round pick and cornerback Kendall Fuller, who was the third round pick for the Redskins. No, I'm sorry for Kansas City. Uh, it's a very and I'm probably mixing up which team, but Kendall Fuller was part of the trade. So Kendall Fuller is going from Washington to Kansas City. So they break down how this all is looked at and where things stand with winners and losers. So they break down, they look at it as from Kansas City's point of view and with Andy Reid. And Andy Reid went through this before with New England, with Philadelphia, with Donovan McNabb. You had McNabb at the end of his, father time undefeated. Let's make a move. Let's go ahead and do what we need to do for our future. The future was looked at, and the process seemed better of let's send, um, let's go ahead and send him on, send him to another team. How he's going to do in Washington is up in the air, only because that's a key component. Alex Smith comes out pretty good. He'll get a pretty decent paycheck, ending his pending on how his career may or may not end. The GM for the Redskins, uh, he mainly gets to look back and now realize that things are just chaotically hectic. Jay Gruden, coaching, big transition. Cleveland Browns were brought up as the winners because there's a possibility they may look at Cousins as a quarterback. Because right now, if you look at it, in the Browns' case, no offense, they have nothing to lose, and with them having, I believe, the number one pick this year, they picking another quarterback isn't going to be a solution. You have a young guy on your bench now. If you get another quarterback, that just gives him concern of, well, where does that leave me on the team and what my future holds. So it's a possibility that that can go on as being the case. Um, Losers in this trade, obviously, if you look at the Redskins as a whole, winning hasn't really been, they've had winning seasons, but it hasn't been consistent winning. And a meme came out when this all happened, and I feel like I'm going to go into this because it's relevant to the story. If you look at the Redskins, and it's been quite a few years since this happened, they had um, they had Robert Griffin III. RG3 was put in a position of doing the best he could with what he had. He was attempted to be put in as a non-mobile quarterback, and we knew that he was a mobile quarterback, but his body just was not able to give him the best gameplay, I guess, in so many words. And him trying to find and gain his own has been like the tough battle. And here it is right now with the NFL having struggles with quarterbacks. Just saying. And now, Kirk Cousins comes in so many words, takes his starting spot. And now you're looking at Alex Smith and bringing him in. And the reference came up. For some reason, I feel like regardless of how this all has gone down, I feel like I'm going to be the reason like why the Redskins won't win, even with Alex Smith being the quarterback. And it's kind of a sad way to put it, but it's a valid statement if you really look at it. So you have Washington as being a loser. And then they even and they said it's in the article. While the Robert Griffin swoon produces some painful memories, would you rather the team use the draft capital they handed to Kansas City to move up and acquire a young quarterback in the draft? So it's just something to look at. Uh, Alex Smith is considered a loser. He gets to take care of himself for the rest of his life. But does he ever make the playoffs again? Speaking about the Redskins and the winning culture, the winning culture is not defined as beating the Dallas Cowboys. Hate to say it, any of my friends who are Dallas fans, you gonna have to accept it. Washington fans, same way. Getting into the playoffs is a big step, but the even bigger step is making a run towards the Super Bowl. And teams, you got to be able to stick with those teams who have or are getting close to making that run. Prospective teams um, looking for a quarterback, having Smith off the market doesn't really leave much of a big pool. Um, and I don't want to say a dating pool, but the quarterback pool is much different now with him being off the market. And then Kirk Cousins loses some contractual leverage here. Washington was backed into a corner momentarily after franchising him twice in a row, but Cousins knew that each 1 year deal only heightened the low end of his salary. Now there's no threat to return to Washington. Cousins is finally setting himself up to be judged fairly by the open market, and there's a chance it isn't as kind to him as expected. So we'll see where Cousins goes if he stays, what the options are in regards to his future. So now, and this is, I normally won't do NFL, NBA, NFL, but I'm gonna blend these in a little different for personal reasons, just because it works out that way. And what I'll do instead, matter of fact, I'm gonna make my change because it's me being me. Um, we do know that there was a Hall of Fame in induction or transition that occurred, and I don't want to leave it off to the wayside as if it wasn't important, but there were a couple of big names who were inducted into the Hall of Fame. A couple of those individuals, well, the players who made it to the Hall were Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Brian Urlacher, Ray Lewis, Brian Dawkins, Bobby Beathard, Jerry Kramer, and Robert Brazil. It will only be the youngest group. It will only be one of the youngest groups in the history of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, and Brian Urlacher were selected Saturday for enshrinement in the class of 2018. All three players were in their first year of eligibility and joined Terrell Owens and Brian Dawkins as the modern era selections to be enshrined. Those five players joined longtime personnel Bobby Beathard, who was a contributor, and seniors committee nominees Jerry Kramer and Robert Brazil for enshrinement. The Hall of Fame's board of selectors met Saturday, the day before the Super Bowl, before Super Bowl 52 to select the class. The 15 modern era finalists were trimmed to 10 and then to 5. Those 5 finalists were then voted with a yes or no for enshrinement. The contributor and 2 enshrinement nominees were voted on separately with a yes or no. The Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony will be August 4th in Canton, Ohio. It was a day for the 90s and the 2000s NFL, as Owens was the modern era selection who had waited the longest, and he was in just his third year of eligibility. Dawkins was in his second year of eligibility. They mainly go into, then they kind of give the credentials of the players who were being chosen for going into the Hall. So I looked at this list, and somebody brought this to my attention, and I never really would have thought about this. Is there any reason specifically as to why Jimmy Johnson is not in the Hall of Fame? And I'm just talking in general, you know, to make sure that it's not like I'm taking sides or I'm taking shots. Because Jimmy Johnson was a good coach. He won. I mean, Dallas got 2 Super Bowls with him as coach. And what's even more ironic is since then, they haven't won a Super Bowl. They haven't been to a Super Bowl. Playoff runs, yeah, those have happened. But a Super Bowl championship, no. Um, so there's that factor that comes about. Then there's also the story with this class. It was an uncertainty of how it would be chosen, how it would be selected, with having Brian Urlacher and Ray Lewis both in the same class, with them both being big names in their at their position in the same year or in the same class. So getting that pulled off, that was huge. Uh, I personally, as far as looking at the Hall of Fame inductees and who was chosen, I feel like they got it right. A lot of people look at T.O. T.O. never gets enough credit as a player. What's tough about T.O. is it's always observed as to his antics and the attention grabbing that he did and all the celebration. Well, number one, in the NFL at that time, celebration was way more acceptable. Like, we just started to release the fun button in the NFL this year. So that was a big step. So then add to that step, at that time, players were willing to take those risks as far as what level and how far it was to go. Even down to Torrey Holt being creative and doing, getting this touchdown, going to the goal post, pull out the cell phone. T.O. and even with Chad Johnson or Ocho Cinco, whichever identity goes by that day, they brought that attention to the game. And you also look at it, and it's something that's not noted or addressed. The year T.O. played in the Super Bowl, he was with Donovan McNabb, and he was not 100%. And his knee or his ankle, I believe, was not. He shouldn't have been playing. Because if all it took was just one hit, and that could have been the end of his career, but he still played. As far as him, and I'm glad he was able to finally accept that it was time, because there weren't really any teams that were gonna be able to accept who he was bringing as a player to the NFL. I mean, to a team. Moss, Randy Moss. I mean, literally, Randy Moss was a reference in gaming and in sports and in real life. Like, you would literally, if you threw a pass and you caught a pass on somebody and scored, literally it was you got mossed, and that says a lot. Randy Moss was definitely a trending player as a football player, as a wide receiver. His first few years in Minnesota, I I had seen freakishly athletic players, but they used that term with him literally, and it was valid. There were catches that he made that no one else would even come close to making. Like, if you look at the wide receivers of Megatron, T.O., Randy Moss, Chad Johnson, um, Hines Ward, like those were what you define as throw. If you throw the ball in their direction, they were gonna catch it. Um, when you look at like wideouts now can play and they can do those moves and do those plays. But at that time in the '90s, late '90s and early 2000s, you you could always see people make discussions of, I don't care who I have a quarterback, as long as I know I got a good wide receiver, I'm gonna make my play. And people made risks. Um, T.O.'s career went in very unique directions. Like I said, like San Francisco, nothing you could say bad about him. Dallas was an intention stage for him, but Philly was where it was kind of like the, okay, what you got? This is the dance. This is the show. And I mean, it went as it did, but when that whole, him doing put sit ups and all that, that was all media. But you don't factor media can factor into Hall of Fame enshrinement, but playing the game is what was important. Brian Dawkins, true corner, played the game clean with no problems. Um, Ray Lewis was like a Troy Polamalu of football. Anytime a quarterback was playing in the game, they would have to spend more energy worrying about where Ray Lewis was on the field, because he was about trying to get to the quarterback. If Ray had played long enough, I won't say that he could have ended. And this is not me being bad. I'm just speaking generally. I won't say that he would have ended Brady's career, but I think he would have. He wanted to rock Brady every chance he could. But the tough part is going back to the Super Bowl story. Brady is one of the hardest quarterbacks to get to. It's just something to look at. But Ray Lewis, most quarterbacks, they knew what time it was with him coming into the game. Like you truly had to keep your eye on the field and knowing where he was somewhere. And same with Erlacher. Erlacher in Chicago, he brought back the true culture of Chicago as far as defense. So the names and the individuals that I know and I can talk about for football and for the Hall of Fame, there's really and truly nothing I could say bad about any of those players. And it would be no reason to. Uh, Switching over to sports because I know I'm sorry, switching over to sports. We're still talking sports. Going away from the NFL and jumping into NBA, we're getting into that idle point of the year, as I like to call it. And I didn't realize this until today that we are 2 days away from the trade deadline. So this trade happening made sense. And the trade that occurred because no one expected it was Blake Griffin. And this trade, what's ironic is this trade happened, if not the day I did the podcast, the day before, but it was in that time period. And it happened so quick, I was like, I can't even put it in the show because it happened, but I need to talk about it. So Blake Griffin was traded from the LA Clippers to Detroit. And they traded him, Bryce Johnson, and Willie Reed for Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, Bobob Marjanovic, and next year's first round pick and the 2019 second round pick. Excuse me. So the Clippers got a pretty good piece of they got a pretty good amount of pieces out of this deal because you don't know if Bradley's going to stay after next year. Tobias Harris has always been trade talk. He was, if you look at it a year ago, he was traded from Orlando to Detroit near the trade deadline. It didn't work out. Just telling you like it is. Um, but to give you the story, um, it wasn't what the Clippers. It wasn't the Clipper anyone expected. After weeks of trade rumors surrounding DeAndre Jordan, the Clips on Monday agreed to send their other star big man Blake Griffin to the Pistons. League sources confirmed to the crossover. News of the deal was first reported by ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, um, Adrian Walsh, with Detroit reportedly sending Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, Boban Marjanovic, and two draft picks, a first round and a second rounder, going to Detroit with Griffin or Bryce Johnson and Willie Reed. The move comes as somewhat of a shock after Griffin inked a new 5-year deal to remain with the Clippers last summer, totaling just over $171 million in salary. With the trade deadline next Thursday, or this coming Thursday, Detroit's big swing and LA's apparent step backwards should open up a wave of moves to come around the league. Woj reports the Clippers continue to engage in talks surrounding Jordan and the red hot Lou Williams, lending credence to the notion that LA plans to remodel their rotation and aim for a soft reset. For now, let's just break this deal down. So, Detroit, they gave an A minus. Griffin is not going to be too happy, after spending his whole career with the Clippers. He was, pitched during the free agency to not leave, but Chris Paul left, and here it is, he's getting sent. And DeAndre Jordan was told the same thing, so it's even more ironic. Detroit has been sitting on the cusp, and going for it with Griffin will ultimately make or break Stan Van Gundy's tenure with the team. They opened the season 14-6, and they hope to make a splash in March before being 22-26 as of right now. Putting Griffin with Drummond creates a very unique spin on the Griffin Jordan pairing. Because you look at it like this: Griffin and Drummond. Drummond is already an inside presence. Griffin is an inside presence as well, but you kind of still have spacing. The problem is you both with either guy you get a poor free throw shooter, so it doesn't really make a difference. Um, Coupling Griffin's inside out game with the freakishly athletic Drummond, currently one of the league's leading rebounders at age 24, should mean space for both to operate. Although Jordan is a superior rim protector, it's often forgotten how good of a passer Drummond has become, averaging a career high 3.8, 3.5 assists, and that his free throw shooting has also improved. Reggie Jackson may not be the ideal guard to facilitate for these guys, but should enjoy having Griffin as a high ball screener. The issue is finding shooters to place around him, and Luke Kennard and Reggie Bullock are currently the only options on the wing. They break down more information regarding that. Then the Clippers they graded as a B minus with an asterisk. I'm not sure they didn't really give the asterisk reason. It will be truly unlike Doc Rivers to deal with a true rebuild. So consider this more of a rejiggering for the Clippers, who were able to get younger, add depth in draft assets, potentially create future cap space, and shed Griffin's albatross contract all at once. Nobody they're bringing in will magically elevate the roster, and until the deadline passes and we know the fates of Jordan and Williams, it'll be hard to fully evaluate their decisions. Hence the asterisk, but philosophically, it's a fascinating play in the long term. They give more information about them, and then I have a couple of things that I'm going to chew at and rip about before going any further. You look at this trade, and it makes you wonder, as mentioned, is Jordan going to be next? It's a few days left. It's a matter of getting a trade or deal in place to get him on the right roster. But I have a feeling he's not going to be. If he's not there, if he's there by trade deadline, building around DeAndre Jordan's tough. I'm not going to lie. That's a very, very tall order to do. But it can be done. So there's that factor that I'm looking at. Then the second part of it that I'm thinking about is okay, we have DeAndre Jordan, great, no problem. Where does that leave Doc Rivers? They've been giving Doc Rivers chance after chance to do this, and he has not been able to do it right at all. You got rid of one of the prime base point guards in the NBA. He's kind of your solid point guard that you deal with. They let him go. You let Blake Griffin go. Between if Jordan and Williams are both there by the end of this season, I would be surprised. Um, All Star, as I stated now, and this is something too that it's not talked about in this article, but it's something I'm briefly going to discuss because I won't say I was surprised by it, but I didn't know this until reading the article. For the life of me, I did not know that in the that this year would be the year of the All Star game is after the trade deadline because normally they have the trade deadline and then, I'm sorry, they have the All Star game and then that following week or two is the trade deadline. So it's more of an ironic or unique situation that you're actually going to have them happen all in that time period. So players might be at the draft. I mean, might be at the All Star game, chilling, that don't even know they're gonna be on the same team. Come the following, or they'll know, but it'll be kind of a unique awkwardness of sitting or what things of that sort. Like for me to put it in personal perspective, it would be almost like looking at Blake Griffin being in L.A. and DeAndre Jordan, like all three, Jordan, Paul, and Griffin, Paul, and Jordan all being in L.A. and it's like they're all on different teams, and it's like, and it'll be the first time they all have seen and hung around each other beyond different matchups, and because I mean, you think the last time they all interacted was the Houston LA game, which was weird still to this day, but it's neither here nor there. So, how do I feel this is going to help Detroit? I don't. I really don't think it's going to help Detroit at all. And I don't put anything against Detroit as a team. I just don't think Stan Van Gundy, his objective in the NBA has always been to have that big man. Andre Drummond, you would think would be that big man, but he's not. As good of a player as he quote unquote has the potential of being, he's not that guy. He more so is he's an inside presence, but he's a challenging inside presence as a player and as a person. Because he really is still trying to like formulate an offensive game. So you have that battle on your hands. Now you have another player comes in who's a little bit more athletic than Drummond, and there's no knock against Drummond because I can't play better than either one of them. If any of them were to see me and play basketball, I would get bodied. I already know that. I'm not even gonna fool myself into thinking otherwise. But if I had to pick between the two of them in a game of trying to get buckets, I'm giving it to Griffin. Griffin only because he could be able to get the ball from the perimeter or to the basket. Pick your poison. The Clippers are rebuilding. They've getting rid of Blake Griffin was proof that they're rebuilding. They transparently and blatantly told you they're rebuilding. Whether you want to hear it, whether you want to address it, whether you like it, whether you're a fan of it, whatever. This is the rebuilding year. And this was even with Chris Paul leaving or not. This was the rebuilding year. You go into the playoffs, you haven't gotten out the first round. It's time to rebuild. We've done it year after year. Something has to change. We'll see, as when we get through the season, once we get to the playoffs, if things change or if anything adjusts. But where we are right now, we're just going to be looking at how Griffin looks uh, in a Pistons uniform. And I'll, be looking to get more stats and more information from that storyline as it comes closer. We get down now to the one of the events, or I don't want to say the event, but the weekend of the as far as All Star Weekend, there are your fair share of events and activities that occur with the All Star Game. So I'm going to go ahead and now that we have all of the participants for those matches, we're going to go ahead and jump into who's participating. So if you are following based on the show notes, you'll see the listing of, or you'll see the link that takes you to everyone who's playing. So the images are there for the skills competition, and I'll make there are a couple of modifications, so I'll give you those in a moment. For the skills competition, it's Lou Williams, Jamal Murray, Spencer Dinwiddie, Al Horford, Joel Embiid, Kristaps Porzingis, and Donovan Mitchell to balance out that big man forward, big man guard matchup again. I'm sorry, yes, and Luke Markkinen. I'm sorry, I don't know why I was like, why are there only 7 players? But yeah, Lou, Jamal, Spencer, Horford, Joel Embiid, Kristaps Porzingis, Mitchell, and Laurie Markkinen. In the 3-point contest, you have Klay Thompson, Paul George, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Wayne Ellington, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, and Tobias Harris. Dunk contest, Victor Oladipo, Aaron Gordon, Larry Nance, and Dennis Smith Jr. Looking at how the tone is set as of right now, Aaron Gordon will not be able to play. So he was scratched from the dunk contest to defend his second place run, and he'll be replaced by Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell has then taken himself out of the skills competition, and he'll be replaced by Buddy Hield from the Sacramento Kings. I don't give a lot of excitement or attention to the All Star matches, but I will say when next week comes, we'll definitely chew into each activity and event because a lot of them will be probably going on as I'm getting off work or in the midst of work or how it all comes together. The All Star game I may not watch, but I'll get highlights, and y'all know you can kind of read A to Z how this can go down. It's gonna be a lot of lack of defense, pretty relaxing year. And I just got a notification, so I'll go ahead and say this. And I was concerned. I was like, wait, Curry is done for the season. So the Dallas Mavericks, Seth Curry, not Steph Curry, Mavericks, Seth Curry's younger brother, is out for the season with a I love when I get a story and then I can't get to it again. He's out for the season, having season-ending surgery on left tibia. So, sending nothing but positive vibes to him for that. I know that's definitely not a fun experience to have to encounter, but it is what it is. As always, I like to share. This is the cutoff point or the turning of the tides with our sports. This is our stuff. Finally, we have stuff. There's a lot of stuff that did occur that I wanted to make sure I get to the listener because it has been that kind of year where some things happen and some things just really have kind of missed me as a person, but not much I really can control or handle on my end regarding that. Um, give me So I'm gonna go ahead and do something a little different because I'm realizing like I'm having a fight and I'm wondering why. But now I'm sitting here like, all right, I kind of have a two and two together. What's going on? So the first story that we're going to talk about is related to there was a new game that came out. Another fighting game has joined the fighting community, and that is Dragon Ball Fighters with a Z. Since it's the Dragon Ball Z trend. Dragon Ball games are for Dragon Ball fans. Fighting games are for fighting game fans. Dragon Ball Fighters is both of those things, and it's for everyone. Combining a beloved series spanning 34 years of manga volumes and anime episodes with a game genre known for complex maneuvers and mechanics, developer Arc System Works had plenty of opportunities to make its first non-portable Dragon Ball game an overcomplicated mess. It could have flooded the game with the same Y characters or the samey characters like 2007 Dragon Ball Z Budokai, uh, Ten, Tenkaichi 3, or saddled it with convoluted controls as like Budokai Tenkaichi 3. But Arc System Works kept it simple. Dragon Ball Fighters is a 2D fighting game with only 24 characters at launch and a fighting system where the most complicated move is a quarter circle forward or back. It's easy to find a favorite character to or three to participate in the game's 3-on-3 tag team battles, and it's easy to make them perform the spectacular special moves fans have been drooling over since the game was announced last June. Maybe if I talk this way, it'll be better. Mind you, there's nothing simple about Dragon Ball Fighters in the visuals, built using a process Arc System Works pioneered for Guilty Gear XRD. Each character is a 3D model, paints textured to look like a 2D sprite. The method gives the characters a gorgeous hand-drawn look while allowing for dramatic camera movement that gives special moves cinematic flair. It's a whole lot of work, but I can't argue with the results. The time-consuming modeling, texturing, and animation process likely likely played a part in the game's limited fighter roster. Longtime fans of the Dragon Ball series and its various video game incarnations may be disappointed by the absence of some of their favorite heroes and villains. As someone who hasn't watched much Dragon Ball, I find this small selection refreshing. Then they give an overview of the interface, everything related to the game. It was released on January 26th. Uh, did I say I've not watched much Dragon Ball? Let me clarify. Prior to the release of the Dragon Ball Fighters, I I'd not watched a single full episode of Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, or Super. I've caught snippets here and there. My nephew was trying to get my sons into DBZ, which lasted until they started hitting each other, but otherwise I'm a Dragon Ball anime virgin. My Dragon Ball knowledge comes from video games. Between the Budokai Tenkaichi, Burst Limit, and Xenoverse series, I've bounced back and forth from the Saiyan Saga to Kid Buu countless times. I know the characters. Who fights whom and when. I'm invested in the story to an extent, but that's never been enough to get me to watch the show. I'm now on episode 4 of Dragon Ball Kai. I blame Dragon Ball Fighters for making me watch that show. Not Goku's death. That was Raditz. Well, Piccolo threw Raditz, literally. Um, Dragon Ball Fighters made me want to learn more about the series. That's partly due to the game, small stable of fighters. It's much easier for me to pay attention to and care about 24 characters, technically 21, since Vegeta, Goku, and Gohan show up twice, than the massive rosters found on in older Dragon Ball games. The scripted interactions between characters found peppered throughout the game's various modes also played a big part in my cartoon watcher conversion. Intriguing exchanges between certain combinations of characters prior to the beginning of battles left me eager to find out what they were all about. Cutscenes triggered during the game, surprisingly good story mode, showcase layered character relationships I didn't know existed, and here I thought it was all shouting and fighting. That said, Dragon Ball Fighters fighting and shouting game is quite strong, yet wonderfully accessible. There are light, medium, and heavy attack buttons, each of which can be tapped in quick succession or mashed to automatically string together a combo of moves. The special attack button generally fires projectiles while passed. Left trigger handles swapping characters in and out of battle and assists. The right button and trigger takes care of the dragon rushes, block breaking throws. Homing, homing super dashes and tide turning sparkling blasts, which recover health and increase damage for a brief period. Toss in some quarter circle front and back movement to activate super attacks and some special moves, and that's all a new player needs to know in order to be able to put up an okay fight. An okay fight is probably not going to be enough, especially with players like Sonic Fox already plumbing the depths of the fighting system for advanced techniques, but it's a happy place from which to start building up a respectable win loss ratio and transition into more advanced techniques. And they give more information. I'm not going to read this entire. I don't want to read the entire article A to Z, but in the stint of Dragon Ball Fighters that I've watched, it is definitely what you would define as a high replay value game for those who are fans or do like what um, what Dragon Ball portrays. The toughest part of it, and I'm in the same boat as the person who wrote the article. I personally have never watched Dragon Ball, and I know that may surprise people, but on the same token, it's a matter of what your everyone's childhood, and I'll say this, and this will kind of put things into perspective. Everyone's childhood is different. That being said, you can't knock what a person was or wasn't able to watch at at a specific time or stage of life. I will say that there's a chance I could see me playing this game. Whether I personally would buy it is slim to none because I don't really do a lot of fighting games. My fighting, well, with no console, I really don't have an option. But in looking at fighting games, I'm at my limit is Street Fighter, Tekken, Cutoff, and I'm sorry, and Mortal Kombat. Even though Mortal Kombat slowly just disappeared, um, I've seen Injustice, but Injustice is not my thing. But all of that being said, you if you are a fan of Dragon Ball, you will probably like the game. If you do not like fighting games, you may not like the fighting style of the game or understand fighting concept, but you'll understand the characters and the story better than those who are just a fighting game participant. That's the best A to Z way for me to discuss or address the story as a whole. So my next story that I have actually is a funny story because I remember looking at this article when this all came about, and I don't I don't even know where to begin, but I'm gonna just begin, and then we'll chop it up from there. So former world record Donkey Kong score is now in pursuit, or I'm sorry, is now in dispute. I don't know why I want to say in pursuit. Uh, I'm sorry, white noise, my mental, because it's like this is a different story. A prominent Donkey Kong forum has removed some scores supposedly earned by legendary arcade game player Billy Mitchell after evidence that there was possible foul play. Mitchell's scores, which had set the world records in Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., had been recognized by the forum for 8 years. Sorting out what happened the day he set his record leaves numerous questions. On July 31st, 2010, Mitchell recorded record scores for Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. after a session at Boomer's Arcade in Dania, Florida. He supposedly logged a score of 1,062,800 points in Donkey Kong and 1,270,900 points in Donkey Kong Jr. Last week, a dispute over Mitchell's scores came to a boil on the forums for Twin Galaxies, an organization that tracks world records and where Mitchell long ago served as a referee. On the forum, poster Jeremy Zelnia Young accused Mitchell of using the Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, or MAME, as to record his scores instead of an arcade cabinet. So before I go any further, because I'm going to educate a lot of even my tech folks and my stuff folks who may not know this. So MAME is a system or a option that has the ability to play multiple games, like as is mentioned here, multiple arcade machine emulators. So it'll emulate various games that are available to be played. The arcade cabinet is if you went to any arcade or went to any venue and you see a physical arcade machine, that's the cabinet that you would either sit or stand at to play. Also, another fact, so I can give you all a better perspective. Mains are typically lower and you sit. Uh, Arcade cabinets are usually taller and you stand. To Why I'm delayed in saying that is because exceptions to arcade cabinets are desktop arcades such as Pac-Man, Mario, Miss Pac-Man, the ones that literally are you sit down, the joystick is under a location. But MAME, you would sit and you sit beside someone and it's like the controller is integrated or the joystick setup is integrated just like it would be with a regular arcade. Want to share that? Sorry, random 2%. Young announced that he was removing Mitchell's scores from the Donkey Kong Forum, a long-standing community site dedicated to the arcade games. Short of live timestamp complete footage, including full views of cab hardware of the games in question, I will not be reinstating any of Billy's scores in question. Young said, if this community and others like it are built on the idea of friendship through competition, camaraderie, through our shared pains in pushing ourselves, our friends, and these games to their limits, then we must strive for honesty and legitimacy, which I'm all about that. Twin Galaxy does not accept scores achieved in a special version of MAME called Wolf MAME. Mitchell's scores accepted as authentically occurring on an arcade cabinet would not have gone under the proper verification process for emulated gameplay. If it was determined that the gameplay was emulated, it would not align the claims that the score was performed at an arcade. Young's argument centers upon the way original arcade cabinets and MAME draws images to the screen when loading the game. While the original hardware loads levels from one side of the screen to the other, MAME loads levels in large chunks. Comparing the loading screens on Mitchell's scores and comparing them to footage of arcade machines, Young concluded that Mitchell's 2010 scores were actually performed through emulation. In other words, instead of you actually playing the game, and I'm reiterating this again because I want to make sure that the listeners get where I'm coming from with this. You can go up to an arcade machine and play NBA Jam. If it is the real NBA Jam, you're putting coins in, or if it's automatic coin related, whatever, you're playing NBA Jam. Whereas if it's an emulation of NBA Jam, it's going to be emulated and everything's going to be loaded from the emulator into the program to be displayed for the gamer, and it's a larger process. So with Donkey Kong, the same would apply. MAME takes those and puts it in chunks, whereas an arcade machine is going to be loading in small little packets. So they have a video where they say it's an image from Chris Gleed's 970,000 score on an original arcade cab. Images are drawn from one side of the screen to another. So it shows you how the screen how it all displays when it comes in. Now it's an animated GIF, but it's still a GIF or an idea of how the video plays. Video from Mitchell's scores were directly captured from the game screen and do not show him playing on a cabinet. Twin Galaxies submissions require players to show video proof that they were playing the game at the time. At the time of Mitchell's score, a referee also needed to be present to validate the scores. The referee for Mitchell's 2010 scores was infamous Atari score setter Todd Rogers, who has been in the middle of a score dispute of his own. Last week, following a case built against his alleged score in the Atari 2600 game Dragster, Twin Galaxies concluded the score was impossible and removed all of Rogers' scores from their records, banning him from further participation. When asked by Kotaku to discuss witnessing Mitchell's records, Roger did not reply. Um, According to former Twin Galaxies employee David Nelson, Twin Galaxies representatives met with Mitchell at the Big Bang event in Ottumwa, Iowa, to discuss further verification of the score before adding it to their leaderboards. Mitchell planned to announce his records to the public during the event on August the 6th. According to the former Twin Galaxies employees Patrick Scott Patterson, Rogers presented Twin Galaxies with VCR recordings of the scores, but said to his knowledge the tapes could not be viewed or verified at that time. I do remember there was talk of a videotape, David Nelson told Kotaku over the phone. I think it was in Todd's possession. Did I see it? No. I don't know if Todd was hanging on to it for safekeeping or not letting people see it, but even if we did get it, there would have been no time to review this tape in the manner that it required. More details discussed, more is addressed, and there's a video on the page where it shows, and I'm not sure if it's on here or not, because there's a point where they're questioning or concerning whether he was even standing at the machine when it was being played. A couple things that I want to jump into about this. I get that people are all about winning and are willing to do whatever it is to get to winning, but you don't. I don't. If I don't need a statistic or I don't need that form of winning that bad. Like there's a line that I just don't see. I don't see the benefit of logically crossing this. And maybe it's all about records. It's all about competitions. It's all about making that mark or making that stance in a community or in the gaming community. But I'm not that desperate. It just I'm just not that desperate. I don't know. And I know I'm being very adamant when I say that, but I'm saying it to you all just to understand, to get you to understand. There's nothing wrong with trying to make history or make an impact. But if making history or making an impact means that I have to modify a system just to do it, I don't want it. Now here it is, rule books, history books had to be rewritten because of what seemed legit and it actually wasn't legit all this time. This almost goes back to the story that I did a couple months ago with the guy who was playing as someone else in a video game tournament and thought nobody would notice it. When it's like, this is a game, it's a community. this is a community. This goes with no exception. This is a community of gaming, video game records, as far as world records or setting marks or standards that others want to achieve. And here you are doing something that you didn't think no one would notice or pick up on. Like, come on, like you gotta be a little smarter than that, just a little. So we talked earlier about uh, the Super Bowl. Many people who watch the Super Bowl, so there's why I will admit I like the Super Bowl for both sides. But the Super Bowl literally is almost my podcast in a nutshell. There's sports, which is the game, which is 60 minutes worth of action and intervals of timeouts and breaks and all that. And then there's stuff, which is all of these jam-packed commercials that players, big companies put millions of dollars into participating in. Now, I don't have the stats with me because normally I'm usually prepared with that, but I'm going to check something very briefly because I think this year ads were not that cheap to get. Um, let's see. They usually will tell you how much it was. Let's, yeah, I figured it was be 5 million. The cost of a 30-second Super Bowl commercial continues holding at a premium level this year, with NBC drawing in excess of $5 million for a 30-second spot for Sunday's showcase. That's a lot of money. Uh, Last year they ran at 5.5 million. Now, exactly why they went down, I don't know. But one thing I will say, and I will go into this before I talk about these commercials, the commercials this year were kind of crap. They were kind of bull. I had to do crap and bull backwards, but they were a bunch of BS. It was not. It wasn't good quality. Like it, because usually commercials kind of get your attention and maintain your attention. Before I forget, because I do want to make sure I address this. I've watched Super Bowls for many years. There have been some Super Bowl halftime shows that I've skipped for understandable reason. This year, it was an intentional, legitimate reason to skip and ignore the halftime show. If anyone may or may not know, this year was kind of the marking of the infamous, because Justin Timberlake did the performance. There still hasn't been any pardon or any, hey, we're sorry. Hey, we know it wasn't you. But Janet Jackson, it was her acknowledgement moment too on Sunday because she has not been invited to a Super Bowl to participate since the infamous Boo Pop when Carolina played New England. So it's just more ironic that it's all somewhat, in so many words, come full circle. But we won't get into that too strongly. Before I do that, I'm going to say one other thing, and then I'll talk about just the article I have. I found it funny, but I felt bad that they did the Super Bowl ceremony. And normally, you know how the fans are cheering and everybody's in the crowd. Well, one of the more known celebrities, Kevin Hart, was trying to celebrate with the team, and the NFL, the security officers who were doing the game, they just weren't having it. And I don't have the video offhand, but if you just look up Kevin Hart Super Bowl ceremony, you'll see where he's trying to get in, and you just see them standing there like, "No, we not letting you on the podium for the championships," which I thought was weird and I didn't understand it, but maybe it's more underlying to that than meets the eye. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about now they put this as the five funniest and most memorable commercials of the night, and we'll just kind of name the companies who did commercials. Tide was first. There have been a number of of meta Super Bowl commercials over the years, poking fun at common tropes, talking babies, cute animals, sexy women that we often see during the game's ads, but none have done it as well as Tide, whose series of ads throughout this year's matchup managed to be surprising and memorable, and made many people forget that people were poisoning themselves with the Tide Pod challenge. If you go to the link that's shared in the show notes, you will see what the Tide Pod challenge is. If you've been under a rock, just if you don't want to know, just consider yourself blessed. Tide's commercials managed to look simultaneously like a out broed out beer ad, an all American truck ad, a low budget insurance ad, and even an Amazon Alexa ad. What makes them a Tide ad? The clean clothing that everyone wears, according to star David Harbour of Stranger Things. So does this make every Super Bowl ad a Tide ad? He asked. And by halfway through the game, he had us believing it. With every shot of a car driving along a mountainside road or a cowboy in the sunset, we kept thinking, will this turn out to be another Tide ad? For a half second, we cheered the return of Old Spice until we realized it was a Tide ad. A third quarter spot with a Clydesdale in a field turned out to be a Tide ad. A geriatric tennis player who we thought would be shilling arthritis medication was in a, you guessed it, Tide ad. Those bright tennis whites would have been a giveaway. That weirdly sexual, uncanny Valley Mr. Clean commercial, one of the worst ads of last year's game, a Tide ad. Even the voiceovers that brought people back into the game after breaks kept the joke going. Brought to you by Tide and Tide and Tide and Tide. Tide had a field day. Tide definitely had a field day with the Super Bowl this year, and I'm okay with it because I feel like it was the most ironic way to do the Tide promotion and put the Tide Pod madness behind them. Next up is Doritos Blaze and Mountain Dew Ice. If you know how this makes sense, you are the real MVP before I share why it makes sense. So I'm going to read the article, I'm going to read a little excerpt of it, and then I'm going to go into what makes this relevant. Morgan Freeman has the voice of God and Missy Elliott. This magnificent rap battle pits freestyle lip singing Get Your Freak On against Peter Dinklage spitting both literal and figurative fire with Busta Rhymes' whirlwind verse from Chris Brown's Look at Me Now. Elliot, essentially dressed as the White Witch from Narnia, cheers an icy Mountain Dew fueled Freeman on. Dinklage, powered by the heat of Doritos Blaze, has a portrait of Busta Rhymes on his side. We all win after this battle. I'm gonna give you the best context of why this works out. There are two things that gamers love: chips and drinks. Chips are always good because it just it's something that you're getting as a form of nutrition in a sense. And the soda is to keep you awake. Most people use different gaming fuels and things of that sort, but a lot of times you'll typically see someone go to the simple route of, let me get a Mountain Dew, let me go ahead and just enjoy this moment. So for Doritos and Mountain Dew to do a commercial together, spot on, genius. Next up, Amazon. Amazon's Alexa has lost her voice. Maybe she caught that killer flu going around, so several celebrities have stepped in to fill for her. Rebel Wilson, who helps an Echo customer hoping to set the mood, with a monologue about traipsing through the Australian bush. Anthony Hopkins, in his signature creepy voice, tells a woman trying to make a call, I'm afraid Brandon's a little tied up, while gingerly feeding his pet peacock. Gordon Ramsay berates a man for asking Alexa how to make a grilled cheese. Its name is the recipe, he says before a bunch of bleeped out comments. But best of all is Cardi B, who clearly takes her responsibility as the voice of Alexa's very seriously. How far is Mars? How am I supposed to know? I've never been there, she says. When another man asks to play country music, she plays Bodak Yellow. It's perfect. And we're not just saying that because Jeffrey P. Bezos Bezos is the richest man in America, and our boss makes a big cameo. Disclosure: Bezos owns the Washington Post. So if he's friends with Cardi B now, maybe he can get her to perform in the newsroom. Are you reading this, Jeff? Please. Possibility would be, and I've talked about this before. She makes a cameo on NPR. I wouldn't be surprised. Then you have Tourism Australia, who did their commercial. I'm not gonna really go into that one too much. I'm gonna carry this one, and I'm gonna leave it alone. The NFL strikes again. NFL proved to you all why they were undefeated. The Simpsons has a knack for predicting the future, but even the 2005 post Super Bowl episode of The Simpsons, in which Homer teaches athletes how to celebrate, couldn't have seen this coming. New York Giants teammates Eli Manning and Odell Beckham Jr. recreated the most memorable scene from Dirty Dancing after a touchdown, and we sat on the edge of our seats for the moment. I've had, I've had the time of my life when I started playing. Twitter tells us that jaws collectively dropped as Manning lifted Beckham into the air, outranking even Ryan Gosling's recreation of the iconic movie in Crazy Stupid Love. Well done, boys. They officially confirmed it as this is the third time Eli Manning has won a Super Bowl the Patriots were playing in. So, a couple things, and then we'll get into the artist spotlight. There were more movie commercials done this year than I've ever seen. There were a lot of movie previews. Um, I'm not surprised because I don't place this expectation. There weren't many gaming related stories, which I'm okay with that. Where the line hit for me is creativity is a challenge, but um, not every sponsor is willing to take that risk, and you saw that in this year's Super Bowl. As I mentioned, to a friend of mine who I thought it was just me, commercials this year were not the best, but it's also one of those things where sometimes it's just the way it is, and you gotta accept it for what it is. And I think they did what they could and made do with what they had, and that's the only way I can present it. So now we're gonna go ahead and jump into our artist spotlight, and it's kind of a good. This is a good one for this year, for this week, because I was on the fence of who I would have as the artist spotlight, but I'm like, let me do some research, let me look up some artists, see who I can come up with, and kind of just dabble into it. So since Philadelphia, and this will kind of be this will be a shortened 6 degrees of separation. Super Bowl's in Minnesota. Minnesota lost. Minnesota had a great play against the Saints. The Saints lost to Minnesota, of course, as I said. Minnesota then went on to play Philadelphia in Philly. Minnesota had that one celebration. Moment happens. They didn't score again in the rest of the game. Philadelphia goes on to the Super Bowl. They were, of course, the underdog in the game. New England gets their VIP treatment of we're the home team, but we're going to wear our white jerseys. I'm sure what impact that would have, but whatever. They go on. They play Philly. Philly wins the Super Bowl. First Super Bowl for for the Philadelphia Eagles. As a celebration with friends, we decide, hey, let's play some music. So we're playing songs. Everyone's picking different music. I decided to go into the archive and pick Teddy Pendergrass. Well, one of the songs that Teddy Pendergrass did was with Stephanie Mills, Two Hearts. That leads us to our artist spotlight. So the artist spotlight, as I mentioned, is Stephanie Mills. She first came to fame as a little white. let me read and learn English. Stephanie Mills first came to fame as the little girl with the big voice, as the star of the hit Broadway play The Wiz, an adaptation of L. Frank Baum's classic book, The Wizard of Oz. She had many R&B hits such as I've Learned to Respect the Power of Love, I Feel Good All Over, You're Putting a Rush on Me, Something in the Way You Make Me Feel, and Home, along with one certified million selling single, Never Knew Love Like This Before. In addition, she also had 5 gold albums. What You Gonna Do with My Lovin', Sweet Sensation, Stephanie, If I Were Your Woman, and Home. Born on March 22nd, 1957 in Brooklyn, New York, Mills honed her rich vocal singing gospel music at Brooklyn's Cornerstone Baptist Church as a small child. At age 9, she began appearing in the Broadway play Maggie Flynn. She was presented with the first prize after winning the Amateur Hour Talent contest 6 weeks straight at New York's famed Apollo Theater when she was 9. That success led to her being chosen as the opening act for the Isley Brothers, eventually becoming good friends with lead singer Ron Isley. Many years later, Isley would manage and later marry singer-songwriter Angela Winbush, who co-wrote one of her number one R&B hits. Mills' debut album, Moving in the Right Direction, was recorded for ABC Records in 1974. A year later, she won the role of Dorothy in The Wiz. Her rendition of the beautiful ballad Home was a showstopper, mesmerizing audiences nightly for a number of years. The original cast recording of The Wiz was produced by Jerry Wexler and issued by Atlantic Records in spring 1975. Curiously, when The Wiz was made into a full-length feature with feature film by Motown Records, Film Division, and Universal Pictures, Diana Ross played the role of Dorothy instead of Mills. The film ended up being a major flop. Singer Jermaine Jackson referred Mills to Motown head Berry Gordy, and of course I lose my place, gotta love it. Berry Gordy, who signed her to the label. Her Motown debut was for the first time written and produced by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. Issued in October 1976. For the first time is a sweet affair with Mills convincingly covering Bacharach David standards, most of which were originally recorded by Dionne Warwick. In 1978, she signed to 20th Century Records and was teamed with the hit production duo of James Mtume, later leader of Mtume, who had a golden single with Juicy Fruit, and Reggie Lucas. Her first LP for the label, What You Gonna Do With My Lovin', went gold, going to number 12 R&B and number 22 pop on Billboard's charts in summer of '79. It spawned the singles What You Gonna Do With My Lovin' and You Can Get Over. Her next LP, Sweet Sensation, number 3 R&B, number 16 pop, spring of 1980, yielded Sweet Sensation. Never Knew Love Like This Before, and the radio aired LP track Try My Love. Around this time, she briefly married former Soul Train dancer Jeffrey Daniels of the group Shalimar. Next came the LP titled Stephanie in spring of '81, which also was a huge hit, peaking at number 3 R&B and number 30 pop. The album included notable songs such as Two Hearts, a mid-tempo duet with Teddy Pendergrass, Night Games, and radio aired LP cut Don't Stop Doing What You Do. In 1981, let's see how much more, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I don't bore y'all to death. In 1981, Mills switched to Neil Bogart's Casablanca Records. Her LPs for the label included Tantalizingly Hot, Merciless, and I've Got the Cure. During 1983, she had her own NBC TV daytime talk show and reprised her role in a Broadway revival of The Wiz. She also signed with MCA Records, where she released her Stephanie Mills album. The first single from the Stephanie Mills album was Stand Back in late 1985, which also included the passionate ballad, I Have Learned to Respect the Power of Love. I've Learned to Respect the Power of Love was initially written by Renee Moore and Angela Winbush, best known as the hit singing duo Renee and Angela. As a gospel group, as a gospel song, and originally was recorded by Alton McClain and Destiny on their self-titled 1978 Polydor LP. The original version is available on Polygram's Power of Love, Best of Soul, Essential Ballads. Because of its massive radio play as an album track, Mills' version of I've Learned to Respect the Power of Love, produced by Philly soul keyboardist Ron Kersey, was reissued as an A-side, holding the number one R&B spot for 2 weeks in spring of 1986. Follow-up. Its follow-up, Rising Desire, reached number 11 R&B in summer 1986. I lost my train of thought real quick. Y'all know me. Um, Her next LP's title cut was Clay Murray, Gloria Jones, Pam Sawyer's song "If I Were Your Woman," originally a 1971 number one R&B, number nine pop smash for Gladys Knight and the Pips. Philly-based producer Nick Martinelli gave Mills her second number one R&B hit with "I Feel Good All Over," written by husband and wife songwriting duo Gabrielle Hardiman and Annette Hardiman. The song held the number one R&B spot for 3 weeks in the spring of '87. Originally submitted to Mills' fellow MCA label mate Patti LaBelle by the Hardimans. The track was included on Mills' LP "If I Were Your Woman," issued June of '87, which peaked at number 30 pop in summer of '87. Paul Lawrence and Timmy Allen produced and co-wrote the chugging "You're Putting a Rush on Me," giving the singer her third number one R&B hit in fall of '87. The singer made it to number 85 pop and was followed by "Secret Lady," which landed at number 7 R&B in late '87. Her covers of "If I Were Your Woman" and "Where Is the Love" followed. All were included on her "If I Were Your Woman" album, which peaked at number 1 R&B, number 30 pop in summer of 1987. Following these hits, Mills contacted Ronald Isley about working with singer, songwriter, producer Angela Winbush, who had hits as half of Renee and Angela, and was forging a hit-filled career as a recording artist producer for the group Body, among others. Collaboration between Mills and Winbush resulted in another number one R&B single, "Something in the Way You Make Me Feel," in summer of '89. Having starred for 5 years in the same smash Broadway show, The Wiz recorded the song "Home for the Play's" 1975 original cast soundtrack album. She wanted to record the song again as a posthumous tribute to the play's producer, Ken Harper, and the song's composer, Charlie Smalls. On her new version of "Home," Take Six sung the background vocals. The song went to number one R&B in late 1989 and was followed by "Comfort of a Man" and "Real Love." The "Home" LP ended up peaking at number 5 R&B, number 82 in pop in summer of 1989. She then recorded a charting single with J.T. Taylor titled "Heart to Heart" in late 1991. Her final MCA album, Something Real, included the hit "All Day, All Night," and "Never Do Wrong." Following this album, she recorded a gospel album, Personal Inspiration, for Interscope Records, and in the late '90s recorded several tracks at Philadelphia International Records with Bunny Sigler, among others. Can't read. Stephanie Mills is what I define as, and I say this a lot with many artists, but she was a known singer, but she was an unknown trend in music, because there were a lot of songs that she did that made its way through billboards and made its way on um, record charts, but it was never like the top. Like, oh man, you heard that Stephanie Mills so and so and so. But what helped her with a lot of her career and a lot of her music was who she did collaborations with and who she performed with. By having the connections that she had between Renee and Angela, with obviously Angela Winbush and Ron Isley, Dionne Warwick, all of those connections all benefited in the long haul, and including the fact with her being part of the Wiz, with her having a voice on the Wiz, that added even more or catapulted her even more. So I'm just I'm saying all that just sharing like she's a musician who a lot of people don't really know or think of in the music industry, but she's part of it. Like you can't look at her think about old school music without mentioning Stephanie Mills. So I will admit I love doing artist spotlights, but an artist spotlight such as Stephanie Mills, I mean, is unspeakable in its own right by far. So giving her props where it's due. Now we're gonna go into what I love and what I adore the most with podcasting. Now I'm gonna balance it out for a moment because it is a big bit of a mixture between it being um, we have an ass of the week and we have a pass of the week. So I'm gonna go into both of these and we'll kind of close out the show. So our ass of the week is a man in Zhejiang province, China, who had to be carried out of a net cafe after losing feeling in his legs due to a marathon gaming session. You can read the article if you want to. It's pretty short article, so I'll kind of be quick, simple with this one. According to QQ, the man didn't take a break during the reported 20-hour gaming session. When he tried to get up to go to the restroom, he discovered he was unable to move from the waist down. It seems he had lost sensation completely and couldn't move at all. A friend is quoted as saying, "We had to call for an ambulance." In a video posted to Chinese video platform paramedics can be seen carrying away the man who keeps saying he wants to finish the game. There's dedication and there's come on, bro. Like there, no, there's a line and it's not that serious. He really, if you playing that much, if you gaming that much, is you got to reevaluate life. Most streamers who do long streams will make it clear that they take breaks in the midst of their streams. No exception here. I don't care what cafe I'm sitting in. I'm gonna get up every couple minutes and just take a break, even if it's to stretch my legs. So if you are out there and you're a prospecting streamer, don't stream for that long. And if you do, I mean, if stream for that long, but if you're gonna stream that long, take some breaks. Go to the bathroom. Get up and go take a smoke break. Go take a walk. Do something. Just don't sit and stream that long. It is not that serious. So we go from a positive story to a bit of a somber, not one of the best stories I want to share, but it happened, so we'll talk about it. Former NBA player Rasul Butler died on Wednesday morning in a car crash, and he was with his wife, Leah LaBelle. They were they to kind of give it in an overview. He was 38 years old. A statement released by Butler's former team, the LA Clippers, confirmed that he and his wife, Leah LaBelle, the singer who competed on season 3 of American Idol, were both killed in the accident. Officials are still investigating the tragedy, according to NBC4. Police received a call describing an incident about 2:30 a.m. Butler's vehicle hit a curb and tumbled before crashing in a plaza. He had played in the NBA. He had finished his career in 2015, 2016 with the Spurs. He had played for multiple teams, including the Heat, the Hornets, the Bulls, the Pacers. He played college ball at LaSalle University. Um, Mainly, Rasul Butler was a very like I'll say I'll use the term like he was a quiet but a decent basketball player. He wasn't anyone that was like, oh, you gotta really watch him. But he was on all. I mean, he played. He was kind of like that veteran leadership that a lot of teams in the NBA needed. Um, Send nothing but prayers and condolences and positive vibes to his family and Leah Bell's family as well. I know it's tough. It's a tough instance, and this will be kind of my closeout for the night for the day. The hardest thing to experience than life is like everyone thinks life is hard. Life is hard, yes, but death is even harder, and death is hard only because you don't know when it's coming. Just like you don't know when life is coming. People, you always hear the term "life comes at you fast." Yeah, I get that, but at the end of the day, you don't want to have situations or circumstances come that literally are out of your control. And that's kind of what I'm going to leave you all with today. If something seems or looks like it's uncontrollable, that's okay. Try to get control of it the best you can, or talk to someone to see what they may have experienced in trying to control that type of a situation. This is probably one of my somber or long. This is one of my longer podcasts, of course, but um, I just wanted to thank you all for listening. If you stuck with it this far, props where it's given. And until next time, the past will be back. Episode 149 will be popping. We'll have a recap of the All Star Weekend with any random and unique trends going on in the sports world. I will be pushing some Overwatch and some League updates in as well. So until next time, this is the Past signing out. BT leaving y'all. Take care.